All right, ladies, welcome to our Thursday Mothers Together. My name is Becky, and we're glad you're here if you're in person or joining online. Let's see. Our next off week is going to be April 9th, so just keep that in mind. In the next month, we're in March, but here we go. And then another fun thing in April, just to keep in the back of your minds, on April 2nd, we're going to be doing a mission morning and swap. So while you're deciding that it's spring outside and you want to rage clean your houses, or not, keep the clothes aside and the toys aside or whatever. So we're going to be having a swap morning here on Thursday, April 2nd. And the leftovers are going to be donated to New Creation Home and their Hope Hanger. So please bring, just in mind, in the back of your head, we're going to have gently used items, things that you would pass on to a mom in need or a family in need. Nothing with like giant holes, or stains. So women's clothes, men's clothes, shoes, kids' stuff. We can also do some like housewares things, but those might be going to Goodwill if they're not claimed, so we'll see. But there's certain items that Hope Hanger will accept, and clothing is all permissible. And then we're also going to be having a diaper drive along with that, since they're in need of size 3 to 6 diapers. So I'll try to have a link in the next week or two for like if you want to send them directly there or like things to keep in mind. But just keep that in the back of your head for April 2nd for a swap. And then April 26th, we'll have a tea and cookie party, BYOC, bring your own cookies to share. And then May 14th is our last session of the spring. So that's coming up. A few things announcement-wise. This Thursday, there is a community conversation happening at Menlo Park about aging parents. So if you're a caregiver for your parents or somewhere in between that sandwich generation, taking care of your own kids and your grown-ups, that is going to be happening at the Menlo Park campus. There's a spring retreat happening March 13th at Mount Herman. And then at the end of this month, there's the For the Bay 5K on the 28th at Shoreline, and you can volunteer to run, you can volunteer, you can just help financially for that. And then the Menlo Kids Summer Camp is happening third week of June at Menlo Park in Saratoga, and then the last week of July at Mountain View and San Mateo. So if you haven't signed up yet, or if you want to volunteer, those are things to consider. All right, I'm going to pray for our morning. God, thank you for bringing us here. Thank you for the sunshine. Thank you for the community of women in this room and online. And I pray that you would be with Kay as she speaks to us, and that we would hear your word to us. In your name, amen. All right. So Kay and her husband Brian started attending Menlo Church as newlyweds in late 2001. That means she'll be celebrating her 25th wedding anniversary later this summer, which makes her feel really old. Older than the fact that she has 3 kids, a 17-year-old son and 2 daughters, ages 14 and 6. Both Kay's family of origin and her in-laws have food as a love language, so there's always great food around at family gatherings and on family trips. 2 of Kay's favorite foods are mangoes and dark chocolate, but she does not like mangoes dipped in chocolate. She definitely prefers them separate. Please welcome Kay.
Thank you. Oh, that sounds a little weird. Okay. Good morning, ladies. It's an honor to be with you this morning in person, and a special treat for me since I'm usually online. So a special shout out to the online crew. I don't know about you, but I'm always so thankful and amazed at how the Mothers Together theme verse seems to perfectly be picked for me. It meets me exactly where I am in need. Do you feel that way? It's been so helpful to spend this year reflecting on our theme verse for the year, 2 Corinthians 12:9, where the Lord tells Paul, "My grace is sufficient for you, my power is made perfect in weakness." And Paul adds, "Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me." This school year, and the past few years honestly, have been a real season of weakness and testing for me, where I have felt stretched to the brink and constantly reminded that I don't have the strength within me to handle each and every day, especially in the arena of parenting. I have 3 kids, as you heard, spanning 11 years. And so this is my second year of having one each in high school, middle school, and elementary school. And this year, my oldest is a high school senior, and last summer, getting through his college application process was really quite as painful as all the kind parents who had given us warnings and counsel told us about. It was true. These past few years, it's been a long season of feeling unable and inadequate, feeling like I'm regressing in my spiritual growth and sanctification because every day I'm losing my temper at my kids, yelling, saying words that I know I shouldn't have said, not being the model I want to be, and feeling frustrated, resentful, and bitter. And usually, right, all these failures are happening multiple times within one day. So I've really had to cling to 2 Corinthians 12:9 more than other times in my life because I clearly and desperately need God's power to show up in all my weakness. I'm not here today to offer you advice or tips about how to have smooth high school years with your teenager or how to speak kind, patient, and loving words to your middle school and elementary children. Instead, I really felt God nudging me to come this morning and share authentically and realistically about some of my messy and ugly parenting, trusting that it will be helpful for you and meaningful today, whatever the age of your own children or perhaps grandchildren. Some of you in this room I know have gone through, and joining online, have gone through really difficult and painful crises in your parenting journey, facing chronic illnesses, serious health issues, learning disabilities, physical disabilities, having your children be bullied, death in the family, mental health crises, so much more. And if you've walked through such a valley, I have such respect and admiration for the courage and faith you've shown and endurance in all these battles. And while I won't be talking about these major mountains today, I do want to name and address the cumulative effect of the little, seemingly mundane, daily battles we have in our household every day, and how they can also form a big mountain that feels crushing and insurmountable. This more hidden, perhaps overlooked kind of mountain can still cause great heartache, grief, distress, and mental anguish. And especially in the Bay Area, where there's so much pressure to have it all together, to have a perfect family with kids, to display that everything is seemingly going great, I want to especially encourage the moms who are new or newer to Mothers Together that this is a safe and life-giving space where you can safely share the lowest and the hardest parts of being a mom, a wife, and a daughter of God. And I want to thank all the moms in my Mothers Together life groups these past few years who have walked alongside me, praying for me and sustaining me through the hard times that I'm going to describe to you today. I also wanted to honor my husband and children through this talk, and so I've tried very carefully to walk the fine line of not being super vague and generic in my examples, while at the same time not throwing anyone in my family under the bus except for me. So I hope I've managed to thread that needle today. My reflections that I want to share with you today are in 2 parts. First, how I've come to see that parenting is truly a crucible for God's power to emerge as my weaknesses are revealed under fire. And then second, how this realization brings me to a deeper and fuller reverence and just, amazement at God the Father's great love for me. So first, why is parenting so hard? Why does it feel like such a crucible, putting us through such intense heat and trial? And as 2 Corinthians 12:9 ruminated in my mind this fall, I realized that the parent-child relationship, and especially the mother-child relationship, is truly very unique across all other relationships and roles that we have, be it as daughter, wife, employee, friend, colleague, volunteer. The mother-child relationship is different from all of these. Let's think about several relationship dynamics in the middle of the slide. And I know there's special circumstances and exceptions, but in general, in most situations, if you think about the history of a relationship, in other relationships, that person will have had history and life experiences prior to when you met them, or parts of their life that are unknown to you. Whereas in the mother-child relationship, especially if you birthed a child, you know the history from the very beginning. It's highly likely that you know more about your child than any other person on the planet, or at least you rank up there among those most knowledgeable people. You have great inside knowledge. For authenticity with outside relationships, we have our mask, we're polite, we're civil, we're guarded. But at home, in the mother-child relationship, it's very likely that your child does things around you, says things to you that he or she would not do to any other person. You see them as completely their true self, like no other. Being at home in that closest circle relationship means that both your child and you can be different from what anyone else sees. For experience in most relationships, over time, as you gain more experience and wisdom, this is seen as a positive. Whereas in parenting, your past experience might not help you at all. Every child is different in personality, so it's almost like starting over with each child. The experience doesn't matter. For credibility, again, in other relationships with time, there's more validity and respect to your words and actions over time. And as a parent, the opposite is true. As a child ages, the parent's voice counts less and less, and peers and other adults become more credible. And ironically, it's especially if a parent has specialization or training in a particular area, then the child really doesn't want to listen to the parent in that area of expertise. Finally, connection. In other relationships, the bond is growing with time as there's more shared experience and camaraderie. And for parents, and particularly maybe most painful for us as mothers, that connection is decreasing over time. In the beginning, there's nothing like the safety and comfort of mom, but eventually, right, before your child leaves home, they really want to break that connection and show that they are independent. And while we all know that this is going to happen and anticipate it, when it actually does, it's still painful. And so when I thought about the mother-child relationship in this way, it helped me understand why I felt so inadequate in parenting. In terms of relational complexity, it does seem like we're set up for failure, or at least in a situation where the odds are really unfavorable. Especially, too, when I tend to be a control freak. For those of you, too, who really like to be in control of things. In the infant stage, we have almost complete control of every aspect of the baby's life, right? When they go to sleep, when they go to eat, when they eat, when the diapers are changed, what they're gonna wear, and especially if you remember like the angst of introducing solid foods, like what's the order gonna be, what are they gonna try first, right? We have complete control over that. And in contrast to, again, by the time they're ready to leave, it's such a monumental shift over about the 18 years that they're now almost completely in their own existence, make all their own decisions, and are independent. And I'm sure those of you who are moms of adult children are probably chuckling at me, knowing how much more change and letting go comes in the college and fully launch stage. I know there's a lot more to go. But unlike other relationships and situations where I felt that through my own effort and planning, I can at least have a decent chance of making things better, I've come to parenting on my knees before God because I know it is completely beyond me and all my best intentions and desires for my children. Even when I love them so much and want the best for them, I know that my best efforts might be meaningless, or worse yet, it might be detrimental. So let me try to be more concrete about this. As moms, we feel the responsibility to train up our children, right? We want them to be responsible, functioning, contributing, respectful adults someday. And Proverbs 22:6 reminds us, start off children in the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it. So we want to give our children a good foundation for when they go off and live their lives. Of course, one area is the spiritual and heart training. If we have a personal relationship with Christ, then we deeply desire for our kids to have come to saving faith in Jesus as well. But let's set aside the faith training aside at this time. I assume we all have some practical standards and expectations by which we hope our children will live by in their everyday life. Our personal list will likely vary, but here's a sample of some of the things I've felt, oh, that's really small, sorry, are important to train my children on. Not in any specific priority order, and again, I try to make them general so as to not single out any child specifically. But right, I'm trying to train my kids in terms of nutrition. I want them to eat healthy, stay hydrated, of course, have good basic hygiene practices, wash your hands, cover your mouth. I had a sick kiddo at home this week. We reviewed a lot of these a lot. Sleep, getting good amount of sleep most nights. Attire is always a good one, right? Wearing appropriate clothing for the weather and the occasion. Safety, being tidy, especially in our shared spaces at home, right? Keeping those clean. Responsibility has been a really important one for my family, trying to train our children to be on time, to follow through with their commitments, to do their fair share. Work habits, right? Putting forth your best effort, to not give up, keep trying, and to finish your work before play. And then electronic devices. I mean, I could have multiple slides on that one. That's just the minefield. We'll leave it at that. But hopefully I'm not coming from Mars, and I feel like this list, it's a pretty reasonable list of training goals. There's nothing extremely absurd on this list. And yet, it's the daily battleground, right? This is the arena of so much daily strife. There's so much constant tension between the principles we're striving for to guide our children toward and the practical reality, right? So training and guiding versus nagging and yelling, wanting to parent with mercy, but also then being rule enforcer and police, trying to show grace, but feeling like the expectations have already been lowered to the non-negotiable levels. I've really come to dislike that phrase, pick your battles, because there's so many battles at home. How do I pick, really? I mean, these already seem like the essentials. And most days in my house, I feel like there's skirmishes around most of the bullets I just showed you on that list for each child, right? So there's so many little battles. And I'm guessing that most of us can relate to the frustration when your kids know exactly what they're supposed to do, but they choose not to do it, despite you having already told them so many times, so that you stop telling them because you don't need to tell them anymore. They could even mimic you or quote you verbatim as to what you'd say in that situation. So it just feels so frustrating, right? And it can be exacerbating when I see my kids make poor, potentially harmful choices, or when they establish some worrisome habits that I'm afraid might have undesirable long-term consequences. So I lose patience, I feel defeated and totally stuck. Have you felt that way too? It's easy to beat myself up about this. I should be, better at staying calm, controlling my emotions, and guiding my children. But this brings me to the realization and acceptance and acknowledgement that I just simply can't do this. Parenting is not in my own abilities and power. I need God's strength and presence with me at every moment. His power made perfect in my weakness, right? That's been our theme verse. When I cannot be the parent that I want to be, God is, and he can. And so it's from this feeling that my children are amazingly gifted at bringing out the worst in me that I've come to my second realization, that my inexperience and inadequacies as a parent bring me to the appreciation and greater understanding of God's great love for me. And this has grown in ways I never anticipated. I don't think I would have known if I didn't go through these parenting trials. Through the struggles of parenting, I am more amazed by God's patience, his loving kindness, his unconditional love, and his graciousness. When I was a teenager, I couldn't understand why the Israelites in the Old Testament could be so stubborn and wayward to keep resisting God's warnings. I mean, why would they continue to be so rebellious? Nehemiah describes it in chapter 9, but they, our ancestors, became arrogant and stiff-necked, and they did not obey your commands. They refused to listen and failed to remember the miracles you performed among them. They became stiff-necked, and in their rebellion appointed a leader in order to return them to slavery. But you are a forgiving God, gracious and compassionate, slow to anger and abounding in love. Therefore you did not desert them, even when they cast for themselves an image of a calf and said, "This is your God who brought you out of Egypt," or when they committed awful blasphemies. I think we've all experienced how our children can be unbelievably stubborn, unwilling to listen to their parents' instructions, sometimes outrightly defiant and rebellious, and ungrateful for all that has been given to them, quite similar to the Israelites. And my response to this frequently is the complete opposite of God's character. I'm unwilling to forgive, I'm ungracious, I'm not compassionate, I'm so quick to anger, I'm stingy in love, and I just want to give up. And as I see this giant chasm between my heart and God's heart, I also realize the exasperation and frustration that I often feel towards my kids is comparable to just how much I grieve God in my continual disobedience and unwillingness to follow his guidance for me. Just as I'm upset when my kids don't want to follow, in my mind, the very good and well-intentioned guidelines and boundaries I've set up for them, I do exactly the same to my Heavenly Father. I don't want to follow his better way for me. I keep wanting to make my own decisions and my choices. And I do have now 2 examples I'd like to share with you where I've had to let go of my parenting hopes and expectations and trust God. The The first is family dinners. When I was a child, my family, we all ate dinner together almost every night, except if my dad was on a business trip. And this shaped my expectation of what I'd have for my own family, that we'd be able to eat dinner together most nights. And as a family of 4, we were able to do this for quite some time. And I didn't realize how hard it would be to maintain this, the nightly family dinners, as the kids got older and the extracurriculars and the sports shifted from right after school to that like mid-evening, later evening slot. 4:30 to 6:30, 5 to 7. I mean, it made weekday family dinners almost impossible. And now, since there's a 7-year gap between my youngest and my older 2, I'm really saddened that in the past couple years, most weekday nights, it's me and her eating together. That's our family dinner. My older 2 kids are out in their activities, and my husband is helping by doing the pickups to bring them home. And so that's left Saturday night dinner as the one meal per week where all 5 of us can be together and have a meal. So even this, the one Saturday night dinner, has to be intentionally planned and protected because of all of our weekend activities. I really do wish we could have more family meals together. And I know it's partly because some of the other choices and priorities that we've made that we're in this predicament about family meal times. And recently, we've been trying to be more intentional to have at least 1 hour of family time during the weekends, especially as my oldest is about to go off to college, to offset some of our missed meals together. But as you know how the weekends are, it's still incredibly hard to have the Saturday night dinner together and some weekend family time. That's the goal, but in reality, it's not even close to meeting every week. It's more like maybe once a month, twice a month. So I've felt so discouraged. Like, why is it such a fight and a struggle to have one family dinner time a week and some together time? And even if the minor miracle occurs and we are all together, it doesn't mean everyone has a good attitude about it and that it's an enjoyable time. So it's brought so much conflict to me that I know it's good to try to desire to have family time and family meals, but it's so difficult. So then I get these anxious thoughts, right? Have I made the wrong choices for us to end up in this situation? Should we have done things differently so we can have more together time? Is it unhealthy or harmful for my family to have such little time all together? Are my kids missing out or not, missing out by not having these important family bonding moments and the chances to communicate together? And so then I go to, well, how should I fix this situation? What can I do? What should I do? I beat myself up, I get all stressed, or again, I can bring it to God, right? I'm reminded repeatedly, I can't do this on my own strength. And this is one small example. God, it's your power in my weakness. I need your power and grace and peace to help me. Proverbs 3:5 has always been a great verse of encouragement, and I feel recently so, especially when I think about it from the framework of weakness in parenting. I have to trust that even when I perceive what's a good intention and a good expectation for my family, like having family dinners and family time, even when those aren't working out, God will help keep us on the right path following Him. And here's another example, again shaped by my childhood. I never really thought how much my childhood would influence my parenting expectations. But I grew up in church, and every Sunday, my family would go to church together, and my sister and I, we'd sit in the pew next to my parents for Sunday service. I had no realization how much this influenced my own perceptions of Sunday morning until I realized that my family's pattern was, upon arrival in the church parking lot, we'd all go out of the car and just disperse and go in different ways. Right? My kids happily went off to their spaces, Menlo Kids, middle school ministries, high school ministries. My husband was helping out sometimes with middle school ministries. And there were quite a number of weeks when then I was alone in the sanctuary listening to the sermon by myself. And I thought, well, what happened to this idea of us all sitting together in the pew? I was kind of uncomfortable with this. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm super grateful for Menlo Kids and Menlo students. I know many families have had real battles just to get their kids to want to come to church on Sunday morning. I know that's really hard. But I've had like a different battle where I'm trying to get my kids to come to Sunday worship in the sanctuary with me on Sunday mornings. And it's great that my kids love in serving in Menlo Kids or participating in NSM. I know they're engaged in serving others or growing in their faith with their peers and having a positive experience doing that, so that's wonderful. But then I'm conflicted because I feel strongly about getting them to Sunday service because of the research that's shown there's a high correlation between kids who attend Sunday service and those that keep their faith in college. Right? If students are only accustomed to youth group or Sunday school, then they have had a much harder time finding a church or joining a church when they're an adult on their own. Because adult church, right, just is not the same as youth group or Sunday school. And so here is another situation, another example of where I've had a rub between my expectation, what is in my mind rooted in good intention, and something I really want for my kids, but again, practically, it's just not going well. So how hard do I push on this one and try to construct some type of solution by my own effort? And again, in this situation, I was trying to do this, trying to figure it out, trying different things, setting up, some expectations, some boundaries, or why don't we alternate weeks, and, had this whole pattern. But a wise church friend, a mom who's actually spoken here with us before, she came alongside me, and here I too want to thank all you seasoned moms who come alongside those of us who are still in the trenches and encouraging us. This wonderful friend, when I shared this dilemma with her, she said, well, okay, how do you know what's best for your kids' spiritual growth? And that just hit me so hard. That was so meaningful. I don't know. I feel like I know, but I really don't. Again, I have to trust in the Lord with all my heart and not on my own understanding, and just to acknowledge that He will set our path straight. So when I'm fixated on my expectations for my family, the way I think I should be parenting, or how I think my kids should be, even if it's all stemming from love and good intentions, if it causes me to miss seeing all the blessings and all the good things in my life, like an example I just showed you, that my kids are actively loving God and loving others, just as Jesus commanded. So should I be so bothered that they're not in a pew? I need to keep reminding myself that in all the daily little battles, instead of feeling overwhelmed by the big looming mountain, I can look in front of me and see God's blessings and provisions instead of focusing on the challenges. So if you're wondering if I would have another flower example from my house, that was my talk last spring, then yes, I couldn't resist. I have this wonderful flowering hibiscus right outside my front door. Unfortunately, I don't have photos of it in its most glorious state. The two side pictures are from last fall, and this bush, the peak bloom, is in the springtime. But in the spring, the center flower there's probably 30 to 50 of these beautiful hibiscus flowers daily on this bush in front of my door. And did you know that each one of these intricate, spectacular hibiscus flowers only lasts one day? It's so amazing to me, right, that God would create such beauty for us to enjoy just for one day. So I can either grumble, because it's kind of a pain to have to pick up all the dead blooms that have dropped in front of my door daily, or I can accept it as a really small inconvenience for this radiant beauty that is flowering outside my front door. And I feel it's kind of the same. If I'm fixated on the areas where my kids aren't listening, or why parenting feels way harder than I want it to be, then I'm missing out on all these daily blooms, the gifts of my children, the funny things that they say, their growth and development, and seeing their personalities emerge. If I don't go through the frustrating and sometimes exasperating side of parenting, then I can't fully appreciate God the Father's great love for me. I miss seeing how amazingly patient God is towards the Israelites, how persistently devoted He is to watching daily for His prodigal son to return, and then goes running joyfully out to meet him. I miss how patient and nurturing Jesus is to His often hard-headed disciples. Right? There's so many examples in the Bible of how God is loving as the parent, and we are in that child role. And so I don't fully grasp how much He loves me as His rebellious, disobedient, difficult child, until I kind of go through it on my own, in my own earthly experience. And then I fully appreciate how much he loves me by sending his one and only Son to save me for all eternity. As I was preparing to share today, I was really convicted again that, I was the one who needed these reminders so much too, right? There's so much truth to the notion that you never really learn something until you teach it and share it. And I still have so much learning in this area of letting go and giving it all to God. And I wish I could say there would be a solution, a way for us to get out of the parenting crucible. But really, it's how we're responding to the frustrations and the difficulties that we can't get out of the crucible, but it's being used to shape us. I need to remind myself every day that the challenges and hardships of parenting are worthwhile and purposeful because they're bringing me to full reliance on God's strength and to marvel at his deep, incomprehensible love for me. He is still always telling me and you, my grace is sufficient for you, my power is perfect in weakness. Let me pray for us. Dear God, thank you so much for bringing us here this morning to be together. Thank you for this wonderful community where we can just share with one another and realize that we are not alone, that we are all in the same boat. Despite the specific details of our lives and the challenges that we're facing right now, they are different, but you know them. And yet at the same time, you've brought us all together so that we can encourage one another and realize that we are not walking this life alone. Thank you for the amazing gift that you've given us to be moms. What a privilege it is. Thank you for the wonderful children that you've given each and every one of us, specifically, to put us together as family units. You designed that and planned that. And please help us to really, in our frustrations, the moments when it's just, we want to bang our heads on the wall because it's so frustrating. Help us to remember to pause, to trust in you, to try to shift our perspective and see the blessings that you've given us, and to know that the frustration is not in vain, and that you are shaping us to be who you want to be, and you are guiding us alongside with us each and every step of the way. So thank you again, God, for your deep, deep love for us, and how we will always be your precious children. Be with us now as we share with one another in our groups, and thank you again for this morning. Amen.